These are the top 8 worst animal attacks. Number 8. Vicious killer goat. In a bizarre incident that proves that even the most humble of creatures can be dangerous in the right circumstances, a mountain goat attacked Robert Boardman one day in the Olympic National Park in 2010. Out for a picnic with a group of friends, they were initially delighted by the appearance and antics of the goat until its behavior became increasingly aggressive. As Mr. Boardman's party hurriedly returned to their vehicle, the goat charged Robert and repeatedly gored him in the thigh. It then proceeded to stand guard over the wounded man and chase away efforts to assist him as he bled to death, despite the efforts of his companions to distract it by yelling and throwing objects at it. Number 7. Giant mutant catfish. Since the 1990s, several people have disappeared in one particular 4 to 5 mile span of the Kali River in Nepal. In nearly every case, the victim is violently drawn underwater, many times right in front of other witnesses, and then the body disappears without a trace. In several of these incidents, the victims were strong men, such as the 2007 disappearance of 18-year-old Atal Kumar. Famed British biologist Jeremy Wade investigated this string of deaths and was able to rule out all 3 species of crocodile that live in that part of the river. So what is causing these attacks? Recent evidence suggests that it could be a mutant goonch catfish. You see, the goonch catfish is one of the largest fish species in the entire world, and they are known for inhabiting the rivers of Nepal and India. These incidents made it onto the Animal Planet television program River Monsters, who were able to locate a record-breaking 6-foot-long goonch weighing nearly 170 pounds. However, experts speculate that the monster responsible for these deaths must be several hundred pounds or more, leading those in the area to be extremely wary of what might lie just below the surface. Number 6. Wolves of Paris. Humanity has been menaced by wolves for thousands of years. They are typically the apex predators in regions they inhabit, with only humans themselves and the 4 types of great cats able to pose any threat to them. As recently as 1986 in India, a pack called the Wolves of Ashtar killed 17 children in Madhya Pradesh. But perhaps the deadliest series of wolf attacks has to be that of the Wolves of Paris, responsible for over 40 deaths during the winter of 1450. The pack was reputedly led by a vicious giant animal dubbed Kotod or bobtail by the locals. The pack actually entered the city proper at one point, driven by frustration and hunger through breaches and holes in the walls around the town. Eventually, a cadre of locals were able to lure the wolf pack in front of the famed Notre Dame Cathedral, where the Parisians had prepared an ambush. After a vicious fight, the wolf pack lay dead, speared and stoned to death. Number 5. Killer leopards of India. While the leopard is the smallest of the 4 big cats, evidence proves time and time again that it is no less deadly than its larger cousins. During the last century, the Indian state of Uttarakhand faced not 1 but 2 deadly leopards, together responsible for killing more than 500 people over a near 10-year period. The so-called Panna leopard was responsible for 400 of the deaths and was only killed when British Parliament requested the assistance of the legendary big game hunter and outdoorsman Jim Corbett. Some years later, the second animal, the Rudraprayag leopard, began terrorizing the same general area, and Corbett was called back to the scene, ultimately locating and dispatching the second animal as well. Local people in the area still consider Corbett as sadhu or holy man due to his efforts in stopping these 2 ravenous beasts. Number 4. Steve Irwin. Although certainly not the worst attack in terms of lives lost or overall carnage caused, perhaps the most famous animal attack of all time occurred back in 2006 when world-famous explorer and naturalist Steve the Crocodile Hunter Irwin was killed in a fluke accident by a bull stingray. Witnesses and experts believe that the stingray believed itself cornered with no potential route of escape when Irwin and the cameraman accidentally swam on both sides simultaneously. It responded as most animals do when they believe they are cornered and turned to fight. One quick thrust of its poisonous tail happened to penetrate Mr. Irwin's heart, killing him nearly instantly. Making this incident even more tragic is the incredible rarity of stingray attacks relative to those of other animals. Worldwide, there have only been about 17 cases of deaths attributed to stingrays in all of recorded history. Number 3. Champawat Tiger. The Champawat Tiger holds the Guinness record for the largest number of fatalities caused by a tiger. An incredible 436 deaths are attributed to the beast throughout parts of Nepal and India during the latter parts of the 19th century. It was so bold that it would attack parties of humans with more than a dozen members in several instances. Numerous hunters were called in to slay the beast, but all failed. At one point, Nepal actually mobilized a unit of its national army in an effort to deal with the tiger, to no avail. All they succeeded in was driving the tiger across the border into India, where it continued its rampage. Eventually, life around the affected villages literally ground to a halt, as grown men would refuse to leave their huts for work once they heard the roar of the tiger in the forest. It was eventually killed in 1907 by the same famous big game hunter who disposed of India's famous killer leopards, Jim Corbett, who followed a ghastly trail of blood and body parts of the beast's final victim, an unfortunate 16-year-old girl. Number 2. Sinking of the USS Indianapolis. On July 30th, 1945, a submarine torpedo fired by the Imperial Japanese Navy struck the USS Indianapolis, which housed a crew of 1,196 sailors. Estimates place the number of casualties due to the blast itself at approximately 300, but the 900 survivors faced days of exposure to the elements, dehydration, and ultimately savage shark attacks. In the largest reported case of mass shark attacks in history, over 550 people were killed over a 4-day period by sharks while waiting for rescue. Many of the sailors had access to life jackets, increasing the horror of the situation. This event remains the single greatest loss of life at sea in the history of the United States Navy. And finally, at number 1, Battle of Ramree Island. The incident holding the record in the Guinness World Book for the largest catastrophe against humans by animals in history occurred towards the end of World War II on a tiny island in Southeast Asia. The Allied troops were in the process of retaking fortifications from the Japanese Imperial Army by land, and at one point, a troop breakthrough and flanking maneuver left thousands of Japanese troops exposed. Their only avenue of escape was through 10 miles of mangrove swamps and thick forests, which happened to be infested with disease-carrying mosquitoes, poisonous scorpions, and best of all, hundreds of hungry, man-eating saltwater crocodiles. While continually urged to surrender, the Japanese never did, and it is estimated that only 20 survivors out of the nearly 1,000 original troops made it out of the swamps alive. According to eyewitness reports, the crocs ate hundreds of the soldiers and would attack by the dozens once evening fell. These were the top 8 worst animal attacks. Don't forget to subscribe to Epic Wild